Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome. I want to welcome everyone here to our monthly podcast. This is Healing Generations, and this is brought to you by the Comadres Network. And, we have this pleasure to spend time with you. And we want to thank you wherever you're at around the world. We just want to thank you for joining us, for making this time not only to hear and to grow with us, but time for yourself. This is a gift for all of us. And it's a conversation that we have woman to woman, mujer a mujer, because we carry that medicine, that healing medicine. And sometimes we get so involved in our lives that we forget as women that we really have this beautiful medicine within us. And so this is our time to connect, to have fun, to have a conversation, have laughter, serious, sometimes tears, but it's our time. So we just want to welcome all of you for joining us here today. My name is Debra Luis Camarillo, proud daughter of Esteban Leos Camarillo, and just happy to be here. And that's the reminder that people always come before us. Our ancestors came before us. Other beautiful people have opened doors for us, so we never, ever want to forget that. I have the pleasure to be joined by Maestra Susie, so we do a co-defendant, co-tag team show we get this time to be together and to share with you all. Comadre, how are you doing?
Hi, comadre. Doing good. I love Tata Sol up there. I never fail to recognize that every day. Just so happy when that sun comes up. But today, it's a little bit blasting. It's pretty hot today, so just trying to stay cool over here. But still giving thanks for this beautiful day and just to be here. Especially excited for our special guest as well.
Well, in the Bay, it's been on and off. So we've had sun, and some days the sun stays under the covers like all of us want to stay, right?
Right.
But, just doing good. We had the pleasure to be in LA last week, to be in fellowship with with all of those interventionists that have to do with working with violence day in and day out, trying to bring healing to our community. And we had the pleasure to be in circle with them. And so shout out, to all of you that work so hard in the community, having to deal with the violence that's happening all around, whether it's domestic violence, gang violence, just violence against ourselves, right? With addiction and alcoholism and so on and so forth. But we had a wonderful time down there in sacred circles. And just amazing young people, right, comadre?
Absolutely. That's so inspiring. Just sending prayers out to each and every one of them for their courage to go out there and be on that front line in very risky situations. I know that they are protected. It's not a coincidence that they're in the positions that they are, but I just can't imagine how they're able to, look past the fear and still stay focused on the healing and on the purpose of why they do what they do for so many, so bringing so much healing to so many communities. It's amazing work.
Well, and I had the pleasure to travel with them for a year because it was a year-long fellowship. And there were 4 women in this group. There was many men, but 4 brave women. And these women were all either directors, of their own organizations, like just key leadership positions. And I'm so excited today because we have one of those women that is with us today to be our guest. And so with that, let's introduce her and bring her on, a bright young woman. I'm very excited to have this conversation. So, comadre, let's bring her on.
Oh, absolutely. It's way overdue. So excited. Been excited all week for this. She is our very own comadre, Angelina Rodriguez. She is the founding executive director of Concrete Rose Coalition, an organization rooted in healing, justice, and cultural identity. In her work, she focuses on supporting system-impacted youth and families by creating spaces for trauma-informed care, restorative justice, and culturally rooted healing practices. Drawing on her lived experience, and she has a lot of it, a deep commitment, very dedicated to breaking cycles of harm. Angelina helps empower families at critical moments of reentry and reunification. Her passion lies in uplifting voices that are too often silenced and building pathways of resilience, connection, and cultural pride. She is a Chicana from San Jose, California, with indigenous roots in Chihuahua, Mexico. She is also the proud daughter of Nancy and JR. She's a very proud sister, a loving Nina, and dog mom to her fur baby, Mesli. Welcome, Angelina.
Welcome.
So happy to see you here today, and so excited for all the medicina that you're going to bless us with, and the beautiful story of your healing journey and how you got this far. I'd like to pass the palabra to you, let you introduce yourself, share a little bit about who you're connected to, maybe about some of the work that you do, and whatever comes out of your enormous corazón.
Thank you, Maestras. I feel super grateful and honored to be on Healing Generations. It's something that I've listened to for a while. I feel really blessed and honored to be in space with you all, especially so much over the past, year or so, but most especially over the past couple months from the Comadres de Retiro, and then, of course, wrapping up part of the fellowship in Whittier. Always good to be in space with each other. There was a lot of, like you said, a lot of masculine energy that we all carry, but then there was still that feminine energy, right? And even seeing it come out of them when they were being vulnerable and nurturing to everybody. So it was amazing. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, joining from San Jose, Muwekma Ohlone territory. A shout out to the Muwekma, all indigenous people, of course. But yeah, proud daughter, proud executive director, proud sister, proud Nina, and of course, my little Mesli girl, proud dog mama, like you said. And yeah, just overall happy to be here. Been a lot of laughs over the past couple months with you all. And I was a little nervous joining at first, but now I'm like, oh no. Every time I see you all or speak to you all, it's like, I'm home. Everything's fine. So that's kind of settling in right now.
Well, I mean, for me, and you've heard me say this many times, this is my new thing. So you all are little strawberries, but we're the elderberries.
Good medicine. Good medicine.
And so when, for me personally, I see young people, and especially young women, that are so dedicated and committed to the healing journey, and fight the temptation, because it's so easy to get off track. But the strength that you all have to stay on track because of the passion and the dedication that you feel within, I get so excited because you all are going to be taking our places. And I think that's always a concern of elders to go, who's going to stay there when you're gone? Is the message and the teachings and the healing going to continue on? And it's not dependent on one person. It's dependent on a whole community of people. And so it's so exciting to see the young people when they just, commit with their hearts to this way of living. And so having you here excites me very much because I know the work that you're doing, and I also know your journey. And I would like to ask you, will you share your journey with the audience here today? How was it? How was it through the way that you had to navigate from a little girl to get to the place that you are now?
Yeah. I know a lot of my story and where I'm at today has to do with the mujeres in my family for sure. My grandmas were all very strong women. They've all transitioned to be ancestors now. But I definitely want to bring their names into this space because they did a lot for me to walk the way I walk now, whether or not they knew they were doing that. So on my dad's side, my great grandma Gloria, my grandma Deanna, on my mom's side, my great grandma Mary, and then my grandma Nancy, who's the newest ancestor of them all. She had passed away in 2021. And yeah, she'd be so proud to see what her daughters are doing, what I'm doing. So growing up was really difficult, I would say, even if I didn't know how to identify that it was difficult then. That's something I actually spoke about a little bit at the beginning of the fellowship, and how one of my goals when we were to set our intention was to try to rebalance my feminine energy. I'm the oldest sister. I really helped raise, most especially, one of my youngest sisters. But in doing that, it wasn't fully being able to step into like a lot of the nurturing energy. It was a lot of like figure things out. When I was growing up, even the women in the family are not really excited about emotions, right? The emotion that they love that I will bring into this space is laughter and happiness, and anger was okay. But sadness and sensitivity and vulnerability and even saying the words "I love you" were not how they showed love, right? It was taking care of things, handling the house, especially when the men were gone, whether that's because of addiction or incarceration. It was really, we don't have time for that. We're in survival mode, right? And so that was something that I really embodied growing up. And, my dad's doing good now. My mom and dad are both sober. My dad has a few years sober. My mom will have 20 years sober next year. And I'm really, really proud of both of them. My mom's been able to get on her healing journey. My dad started his healing journey, and I'm really, really proud of them leaning into their emotion. It's not as difficult for them to say, "I love you," right? To give a hug. And that was something that wasn't really there when I was younger, And as I'm telling my story, I want to honor the fact that it's also tied to their stories. And so most especially my mom, when I talk about her, I want her to know that I know that she's coming from a place of doing everything she knew how to do at the time. And I know that she walks in her truth as well, right? And so even though a lot of our experiences are interconnected, our realities are a little different sometimes. Yeah. And so I want to, as I'm going to start telling some of my story that's so connected to my mom, I want to honor her in that way also, because man, what a matriarch. I take so much pride and walk with so much gratitude when my mom is able to give me a hug now, because I know when I was growing up, it wasn't something that was really prioritized in making time for. Not because she didn't want to. I really think she just wasn't comfortable with it. It wasn't how she grew up. And I know she was a young mom. My parents are very young parents. They had me when they were teenagers. My dad fell to the system and to addiction very early on. And my mom, again, was just in survival mode, making it happen for her and me, and then eventually my younger brother. And life just kept going. There was a couple times we were not in her care, and we were in the foster system. We did touch the foster system. And the last time that we touched the foster system, though, was actually when my mom really decided to commit to sobriety. And 20 years later almost, and she is still doing her thing, and she's in healing work too. She works with community and working with families that have similar backgrounds to ours, or even sometimes very different backgrounds, but a lot of the same impacts from the system. And I couldn't be more proud of the woman that she is today. So after being touched by the system in multiple ways, I'm thinking right now about how you're talking about elders, right? And Elders are so sacred for multiple reasons, not just because the wisdom that you all have, but our community has a lot of elders, but doesn't have a lot of elders, right? I'm thinking back to the time when I really started working with community and getting into cultura, like more in depth. And like a lot of people, it was, during my first Chicano studies class. And that also happened to be a time when I lost one of my foster brothers to street violence. He was gunned down here in San Jose. And I kind of realized that I was at like a crossing point in my life. I was about 18 years old. My little sister was born. She was probably about 4 at the time. My mom was newly sober. I just moved back in with her. And I started really thinking about how a lot of us don't plan past 20, 21, if we even think about making it that far, because it's not something we often see. And so I'm really reflecting right now as you're talking about elders and you trusting us to continue this work. And the depth of that is insane to me. I'm not perfect by any means, but I do walk with cultura every day to the best of my ability, connected spiritually to the best of my ability. And to be experiencing this and be able to be so blessed to have access to you all and the rest of NCN and the other leaders in this work is really heavy on my heart in a good way. And all those words to say, that's why I do the work that I do now. We talk about la cultura cura, and it is a philosophy, but it's not just a philosophy, right? It's an actual reality. And like we see it when we're in ceremony, we see it when we're in círculo, but also we see it when we see mothers hug their kids. We see it being able to still see all the beauty in our neighborhoods, even though the media and society likes to paint a different picture. I'm thinking about right now how when the first in-person gathering that we had for the fellowship, and how on the day, I think it was the second day or the third day, and we were in sacred circles I want to say we were in the middle of prayer. We might have been about to start prayer, and this helicopter was just outside. And even though we are all CVI workers, and this is not new to us, there was something about it happening in that moment that really made us all kind of rethink the importance of what we're doing. Because like you said, the work that we do can be really dangerous sometimes. And I think what was beautiful about that fellowship, well, there was a lot of beautiful things, but one of the most beautiful things was that we were really looking at those of us who are doing the work in the communities that we grew up in, and how, yes, any type of community violence intervention work is difficult and has a lot of vicarious trauma, but it really hits differently when it is your own community. And sometimes it's your own peers or the kids of your peers, and sometimes those peers are no longer here, right? And intervening for them to be able to walk in their own power and to see that they have power and dignity, no matter how much we're told every day that we're not worthy. It all kind of centered us in that moment. So all in all, that's why I do the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. I was actually doing the grounding prayer when that helicopter and, and it was our opening prayer to get our meeting started. And it was so loud, like the helicopter was just hovering right over us. It was so crazy. But I agree, Mia, what a reminder, because that's, especially, the CVI, that's what they deal with every day on a constant basis as well. So, yeah, it does put a different spin and reminder of why, we need to be okay.
I'm sure you started praying harder.
Yeah.
For sure. I imagine it could also be very triggering.
Mm-hmm.
The cell memory, especially if you're dealing with that on a daily basis. That I can't imagine. But, Mija, thank you for being so transparent and willing to share, such deep parts of yourself here with all of us. A lot of lessons already, just from your palabras. I'm curious to know, we're talking about healing generations and healing, and as you had the opportunity to join us in many of our trainings, You talked about wanting to cultivate your feminine energy. And when we're talking about healing, we always say, healing is feeling. And for one, to really acknowledge your courage to do the work that you do out of everything that you've been through, but even more courage to allow yourself to embrace that medicina that you carry in the feminine essence of who you are. I'm curious to know, because I know it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're on the front line, to be thinking about feeling. It's more about, the crisis in the moment. But when you do have your time and your space just for you, and to come back into your body and embrace all of who you are, I'm curious to know, what lessons have you learned from embracing, giving yourself permission, actually, to embrace that feminine essence, that medicine, a part of yourself, and maybe even how has it helped you in the work that you do in making these connections to all of these people that you work with? Because it is all about relationship, and that relationship starts with ourselves.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, Maestra, is love is never wasted.
Powerful.
And I think there has been times in my life where I felt like it was. And I think that was because in that moment, I was leading with emotion, which is okay, as long as you're able to ground yourself after you feel what you have to feel. So what I would say is that love is never wasted. And I think that has been something that I have had to really affirm to myself sometimes when I'm having these conversations with Creator, when I'm having these conversations with myself, with my best friends, especially Annalisa and Ruby. I brought them into space at the retiro. Well, yes. Annalisa was actually there, of course, but yeah. And going back to what I was saying about when I was younger and how, the women in my family have been less affectionate, because I think everything comes down to survival mode, whether it was physical survival mode, mental survival mode, get through the day survival mode. And it took a lot for me to learn how to embrace affection and love, really. To be loved is to be seen is to be loved is also what comes to mind. And I think a lot of the times, at least in my family and my group of friends that I grew up with, we just expect people to know that we love them. Of course I love you, but I think saying it is so important. And allowing yourself to continue to love because it's never wasted is extremely important too. And that's really what it comes down to when I was talking about wanting to embrace my feminine energy. Because a lot of the times in my life, I've had to show up as the one that was just handling everything, as a lot of other women, most especially brown women, I know have to do. And to not see reciprocity in the way that you feel like you should see it can take a toll on your spirit, on your corazón, on your mental and emotional journey. But I also think that allowing that to take over rather than just feeling it and accepting it and continuing to move can kind of also be what directs you in your journey. And I think for a long time, I was allowing myself to be directed in a way that was really led by being jaded or feeling unappreciated. And over the past year or two, in deepening my relationship with God, with Creator, and really with ceremony, I've come to terms with the fact that you might not always get what you feel like you need in return or in reciprocity, but the love is never wasted, because sometimes we're put in people's lives because they need us in their lives. And we're part of their journey, not so much the other way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I know that there's been times where I was the only person that was showing someone love the way that they needed to see it. And even though it wasn't reciprocated, or sometimes it was reciprocated, but not in the way that was my love language, right? You can't allow the feelings that you feel, whether it's anger, hurt, sadness, envy sometimes, right? You can't allow those feelings to consume you. and remind yourself that love is never wasted, then those feelings won't harbor in your heart. At least for me, that was something that was really big for me. And it has allowed me to continue to step into my feminine energy. And I also think that even when I've said that sometimes, it's been a little misunderstood. Sometimes I feel. And I think that sometimes people misunderstand what I'm saying, stepping into balancing my feminine and masculine energy. I think the key word there is balance, right? I think sometimes people are like, oh, like, does that mean like more girly, or does that mean like more sensitive? And no, but even if it did, what's wrong with that, right? That's what I would say. I think that things that have helped me would be love is never wasted, and continuing to ground myself in that rather than allow feelings of resentment or anything to harden my heart. My heart was hard for a very long time. You know, it's hard work doing heart work, right? And to allow yourself to continue to love and feel those emotions, especially ones that you're taught to keep down as a brown girl. It takes a toll when you become a brown woman, and these lessons that you have to unlearn and relearn, and also not harbor hate or hurt in your heart for the people who taught you those lessons, right? Because it was often done out of wanting to protect us and only being able to use the tools that we had at that time, right?
I love that.
Beautiful.
Love is never wasted. I want to borrow that from you. You know, you mentioned earlier, and you talked about this, and this is so real. But if you don't live in certain places, it might be hard to understand, right? But a lot of our youth and a lot of us that come from some of these places never thought we would live longer then, or get out of our 20s, or, you know, if you might enter into the 20s. And for a lot of people, that might be difficult to understand. Like, how is it possible that a youth doesn't feel like they're even going to get to be 25? But yet that is a reality of a lot of our youth, especially in the inner cities. And this isn't anything new. Let me share with you. My father bought, plots for him and his mother, and bought an extra one for me. It wasn't that he didn't have faith. Like, he really had a faith, and he said, I'm going to see you okay one day. But at the same time, there's a reality as well. And he bought that extra plot for me because of the life that I was living. And so a lot of our youth, that is a reality. And, and I hear people talk about, well, why don't they do this or that? Well, it's hard to do this or that if you don't even think you're going to get there. Right? And I just bring that up, Mija, because you started an organization with a lot of that in mind. Of the reality that our youth, especially in inner cities, and that are conflicted and struggle with all the society that's just, they're at a disadvantage because they don't have finances, because they don't have a safe place to be, because maybe they're homeless, because parents might not be there or be there. There's a lot of difficult challenges that they face. And it's hard to keep hope in those situations. But you have hope for them. You have created an organization because your vision is all about hope for them. And would you share a little bit about that vision of Concrete Rose?
Yeah, it is about hope. Going back to when I had mentioned I had lost my foster brother to gun violence. I'll say his name, Ronnie Kane Gomez. I had my little sister with me. And really, when I was thinking about how the year that I lost Ronnie, I also lost 5 other friends to violence, whether that was domestic violence, gun violence, sometimes a combination of the two, right? That year was really transformational for me, and there was a lot of hurt. But this little baby girl running around like crazy, Diana, at the time, the youngest of our Brady Bunch, or whatever the Latino version of the Brady Bunch would be. I looked at her and I thought, this can't be her reality. Mm. And our parents are doing the best that they can, and the best that we can is not enough for her. So what are we going to do? What am I going to do? What can I take control over to create a better futura for her, right? So I just started grinding. I was working all the time. It wasn't the healthiest, but I was like, I got to make sure she's okay. And I think at that time I was thinking more emotionally and financially, not like I was the only one supporting her, but just like I just wanted to make sure she was always going to be good. And over the years, that transitioned to like not worldly good. I want you to be spiritually and emotionally good. I want you to be able to thrive spiritually. I want you to be able to be love and to love. And when I would think about Concrete Rose Coalition, it didn't have a name then, but the idea started to formulate. And I started thinking, like, how are we in these systems that are just cycling us through, right? Like, in order to get the resources, you have to be system involved. But in order to be system involved, there has to be harm that's being done by you or done to you. And why should we have to endure more harm just to get? And I started thinking about that, right? These cycles. And I started thinking that one of the things that I see that's missing is people with lived experience. Before lived experience was a coined term, right? Like, people who have been in these systems are not really the ones who are helping people in the systems. Mm. And the only people that are helping us are people who are, and this might be controversial for some people, but it is what it is, right? The only people who are helping us are the people who are being paid to do so, and their salaries to support their families are contingent on us staying in the system. Whether a social worker, a CO, a PO, whatever it might be. And I'm not saying that people are consciously, that everyone is consciously thinking this, right? That's kind of what it comes down to. Like, us being cycled through these systems is job security for them. And we spoke about that at the fellowship last week, right? And so I started thinking, like, we got to do more. Like, this idea went from Diana to my community, right? I started thinking, like, what about these other kids who don't have an older sister who's able to look out for them? Like, like, what do we do? So eventually I started thinking about, like, working in a nonprofit. And so I did. I was a residential counselor for some time. I was a case manager. I was a youth intervention worker. And I was working in the nonprofit field. And I just, even though the organizations I worked at, a lot of them were amazing organizations. And I always thought, there's a gap. There's a gap here, right? And so I remember one day, actually at my compa's birthday, at House of Pizza here in San Jose, I was talking to one of my friends, KK, and I was telling her, like, this is what I would want to do. Like, I wish someone would do it, and da-da-da-da. And she was like, ponte las pilas. Like, why don't you do it? And I was like, me? Nah, I can't do that. Like, and she was like, you're already doing it, and you already have the idea. Like, put one foot in front of the other and just go with it, right? And that was, I think, the time that I really started thinking, like, you know what? Why don't I do it? Like, who better than me to do something like this, right? Like, I know my community. I know what it's like to be impacted by these systems, not just the carceral system, but the dependency system too, right? And even going back generations, my grandpa's sisters were in boarding schools. Like, this is something that our family has experienced generation after generation. Like, who better than you, right? And so that's when I really started putting together the real idea and our values and everything. And, fast forward to today, and, we don't got a lot of funding, and we don't have a lot of resources, but leaning on community, which is one of our pillars, we make it happen. Whether that's us cooking in the kitchen to feed people, or showing up at somebody's house, or whatever it is, gathering at a park, right? Things that we do all the time, but just putting Concrete Rose Coalition behind it. And so really, as I think about it, a lot of that started with Diana, just making sure that she could be loved, experience love, and to love others and know that that's okay, right? Because I think that's the other thing that comes with, like, being sensitive or being in tune with your emotions. we're taught early on, we've been conditioned that like love can get you killed sometimes. Love can be an area of weakness, right? And I really didn't want her to think that way, to just know how to love safely. But you could love with your whole heart and you can experience love, and it's okay to feel loved. And, you know, she's going to be 21 in January, and I see her hug people. And I see her being the first person to say, I love you when we're hanging up the phone or getting dropped off. I see her allowing people to love her. And when I see that, I know that if I did anything right in my life, it was ensuring that she could love and be loved, given she gets her own credit for all the work she's done. But, you know, that makes me feel like I've accomplished something. And I know through Concrete Rose Coalition, working with these families and, you know, all the curriculum that we run is National Compadres Network curriculum. So allowing space for them to hear that they're sacred and learn the lessons that you all have taught me, being able to pass those on is amazing. And it truly is healing. And it's so important because, as you all know, doing this work, oftentimes being in Círculo, specifically with NCN, I'll say that, specifically with NCN, it's the first time that we hear that we're sacred. Círculo couldn't be anywhere, but there's something really special about the círculos that we have together. And having someone tell you that you are sacred, even if you, when you hear it that first time, you don't believe it, it sparks something. And that goes back to hope, right? And it goes back to being loved is to be seen is to be loved. Sometimes we're hearing that in the midst of the chaos of our life. You are sacred. The power in that, even if you don't believe it at first, because sometimes it feels a little weird, right? When you hear it, what do you mean? What does that even mean? I'm sacred. I'm worthy, right? But you begin to feel it. That's the first step of feeling it and embodying it and owning it, is to just hear it or read it for the first time. And it's all connected to hope, like you said, Maestra Deb.
Love heals. Powerful medicine, Amija. And I know it couldn't have be done until you learned it for yourself, starting with yourself. Many thanks to Diana for being that inspiration so that we can receive all your medicine as well, you know, being that catalyst. God bless her. Just so proud of you, Mija, for being able to not want to remain a victim of your circumstances, not using your wounds to give you permission to be any way you want to be, as a lot of us do. Sometimes the wounds serve a purpose, but it's not in a good way. But just so proud that you've chosen to dedicate yourself to your healing and transform your traumas into medicina, to be able to heal first yourself, but also to heal others. Courageous journey, as Maestra Debra always shares, and the longest journey. Every quadrant of our lives is, you know, of womanhood, all those different stages that we go through with so many different lessons, and they never cease to surprise us. But also it's a blessing when we're able to allow ourselves to embrace all of the challenges that come our way, because we learn so many other new facets of ourselves that we, any other way, we would have not even known. That we have that medicine inside of us, that we have courage, that, you know, that we can be loved, that we can receive love and give love and have that reciprocity. But there had to have been something inside of your soul. And I guess I'm looking through the perspective of when you are out there on call to go and intervene in these risky situations. Where do you draw that courage from? Because you never know what to expect, what's going to show up when you get there, depending on the situation. How do you prepare yourself before you show up in those situations? Where does that courage come from? Where does that confidence come from? Where does that faith come from? I feel in my spirit, even as I'm saying it, I know it's your grandmother's, no doubt, no doubt. But how do you see it? That's how I'm seeing it. But where is that well of courage and faith, radical faith, that you prepare yourself for those situations?
Prayer.
Absolutely.
Prayer, for sure. You know, we talk about body warfare a lot. And I want to go back to what you said about like our wounds and how they can prepare us or fuel us, sometimes not always healthy ways. But I think for me, at least, body warfare and spiritual warfare are not too different for me. And I think about a lot of the experiences that I've had, a lot of like worldly experiences that I've had. And I think about, growing up and all the different types of violence, domestic violence, sexual abuse, guns pulled out, fighting. Like there's just so much that I think of. And I even think about, like my experiences as an intervention worker and a residential counselor. And, there was times that these young folks were struggling so much, and times when we'd have to like administer Narcan, times when I had to bust down a bathroom door because someone was in there harming themselves and having to just literally hold their wrists together until the ambulance decided to get there, because we know how that goes too in different zip codes. And I really am just thinking about one common factor besides the adrenaline rush, right? And the anxiety that comes with these situations, these worldly situations. The only thing I could think of, whether it's the spiritual warfare of like dealing with depression and things like that, or whether it's worldly and dealing with an act of physical violence or physical harm that's happening, right? And the only common thing I could think of right now, besides the ancestral protection, is prayer. Preparing yourself really to walk into any of these situations, or to even deal with these situations, in our own heads with what we deal with in our own journeys. And I know that when we talk about healing, especially for those who are newer on their healing journey or haven't started a healing journey but have seen other people do it, it gets romanticized sometimes. And I could see why. But as romantic as healing could be, it is also, I want to say, the most unromantic thing that could happen too, because it is real and it is raw and it is deep and it is challenging. It's something that we have to choose every single day. And even then, there's going to be days where we wake up and I'm choosing healing Monday, choosing healing Tuesday. When the time Thursday comes around, I just don't got it in me today. Right? And sometimes we succumb to either the mental pressure or struggle or something worldly with like work or community, and it's hard, right? And then that takes us out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and maybe Sunday. But then Monday, after like praying or battling and just trying to persevere, we're back on the healing journey on Monday, right? And it's like, just like, that's why we say healing isn't linear, right? It's something that we have to choose all the time. And it's not easy to choose because it comes with vulnerability. It comes with scary situations. It comes with emotions. And it comes with having to be realistic and transparent and true to yourself. Because like we can fool the world. I think that's a lot of people are able to do that. Put on that mask, right? We talk about cara y corazón. A lot of people can show up in spaces with this cara that's like, I'm good, everything's great, right? And then at the end of the night, it's just us and our corazón. Even if we have a partner to lean on or our family to lean on, it's really you and your own mind and like trying to continue on that path. Like it's great when we have supports, but sometimes even those supports don't feel, at least for me, right? I deal with depression, and sometimes, on the darker days, it is like, I know there's someone I can call. There's someone sitting right next to me. There's someone who checked in on me, and it's really just like, doesn't feel like it's reality or that it's so close sometimes, right? All you can do is pray. That's all you have in those moments, because the resources that you have around you don't feel in your reach or tangible, even if someone brings them to you and puts them on your lap, right? And so I don't even remember the question that you asked me, Maestra, but that's where I'm at right now. Like healing is hard.
Where you find that courage? Where you find that
within prayer, within creator, within community, and sometimes it looks different, right? And when I say prayer too, I want to be really honest with what I'm saying. Sometimes prayer is, sitting there and having a conversation, lighting a candle, visiting the altar or a park or a church. And sometimes prayer is like crying in the shower.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer can be anything that it is to you. Like there's no right or wrong way to pray. There's traditions, there's customs, but there's no right or wrong way to pray. Whatever it looks like for you to continue your faith and to pull that courage out of somewhere. So I guess to answer your question in a simpler way, like it really just varies. It really just varies, but pulling it out of wherever you need to pull from, connecting with nature, talking to God. You know, when I pray, like, oh man, my ADHD is really there. I'm like talking to God. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm telling you this. You know what I'm talking about. You see it. Like, you know, I talk to him like he's my homie or something. Well, he is, but, but you know, like it varies day by day. But I think really commitment to whatever it is that keeps you going. And for me, I'm very grateful that that's prayer. It's ceremony.
Yeah, that's good. You know, I just appreciate this talk from the heart.
Authentic.
You know, because you're bringing up some things that sometimes we steer away from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which are like, oh yeah, I got it together or whatever. But the reality is that nobody has it together. It's a lifelong journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was working with staff in the Central Valley, and I'm like, look it, some days I wake up and I'm enough. And there's some days I wake up and I have to be enough for my mom or my partner or the dogs because I'm not enough that day. So we have to do it for other things, other reasons, other people. And that's okay. And there's sometimes this thought out there like if we don't do it like this, then something's wrong with us. No, this is life.
Mm-hmm.
This is life, and prayer is a conversation, however we do that conversation, with something greater than yourself, however it shows up in that day, that time, you know. But before we go, because I hate this, the time always goes so quick. You know, we're having these conversations.
Just getting into it.
I know. But before we go, Mija, leave us with a consejo. If you're looking and thinking about the youth, what would you advise them? What consejo would you give them? And don't leave the elders out either. What words would you have for the elders as well?
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds very cliche, right, to say this. And I know that when I was younger and I heard this, it was like, get out of here, dude. Like, this is not even what I need to hear right now. But today only is today, right? I think usually what I heard when I was younger was like, it gets better or it won't be this way forever. But that was never helpful for me, if I'm being honest. Even when I knew that, I didn't feel it. And so what I like to say, it's not a quote I created, you know, but I picked it up somewhere along the way. And that is, un día a la vez, right? One day at a time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you woke up today, you know, it might not always feel like a blessing when we wake up, but it really is. It really is. Take a breath and keep it pushing. Whatever keep it pushing means to you in that day. It doesn't mean keep it pushing. You got to be running around doing all these things. Sometimes keep it pushing really can mean, let's take a shower today. Let's brush our hair today, right? Like, and that also similar to what we were talking about, how the not making it past 25 might not make sense for people, right? It might not make sense for someone who hasn't dealt with that kind of depression or that kind of spiritual warfare. You know, they might think, of course, take a shower today, right? But like, that could be a lot for some people. Eat breakfast, drink water. That could be a lot for some people. And I want to say for you, if you're listening to this and that was you today, keep it pushing, whatever that looks like for you. You're here. I'm glad you're here, whether I know you personally or not. I'm so glad that you're here and you are worthy of all things good because as human beings, we are. No matter what sometimes our minds say, what society says, like, we're worthy of all the good things, even if what we're used to is a lot of the bad things. We're worthy of love. We're worthy of goodness. We're worthy of greatness, really. And I think that can be applied to young folks and to elders. But what I'll add on for the elders is trust us. Trust that we are being laced up with the game that you are giving us, even when it feels like they still don't listen, right? Like it's there and we'll know to pull on it in the moment that we realize that we need to pull on it. And I'll admit, sometimes that's probably later than we should have pulled on that advice you gave us, but it's there. It is there in our pocket. And trust that we'll use it.
Thank you.
Okay, we can retire now.
Not yet.
The seeds have been planted. I'm glad to hear that you do listen.
I don't know if they're planted all the way, but they're in the garden. They're near the soil.
Okay. Well, keep watering.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a blessing. What a blessing, I'm telling you. If you joined us today, I know by listening and being with us today, you have come out a little bit better, just like all of us. And the wisdom that has been shared, and from young mouths, that's what I love. These are our youth, and they have so much wisdom and so much medicine. Just so excited for those young people coming up today. And very grateful, Mia, for joining us. And also, I want to remind you that it was really powerful what Angelina said. She said, listen, if you barely made it up today, if you got into the shower, that's amazing. That is tremendous. And look at it in that way, because sometimes just getting out of our bed is the biggest victory we have that day. So don't look down. No, look up to the stars. You are sacred. You are good. You are blessed. And if nobody has told you that lately, we want you to hear it from all of us. You are a gift. You are a treasure. You are sacred. And we definitely love you wherever you are at around this Mother Earth. And with that, we want to thank you as well. Thank you for joining us today. May the blessings continue to flow wherever you are at. And I hope that you come back and visit us next month as well with the Healing Generations National Comadres podcast, brought to you by the National Compadres Network. And with that, we are going to sign off. Comadre?
Love heals.
Love heals.
Yes.
Angelina?
Love is never wasted.
Love is never wasted. Mm-hmm. And I will say bendición until we come together again. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bendiciones.
Plazo Kamati.
Adelante.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.